live stream. I have been cleaning all day trying to organize my kids' room so we can get ready for the back to school hustle. Some people are back to school. In Michigan, we start on the 26th, so it's back to the old routine. So I'm trying to get my kids organized. But I just checked in. I was reading some YouTube comments, and one of my followers, and first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who follows this content, finds some beneficial aspect of this content. Thank you. And if you're just discovering my content for the first time, please hit that like button if you like a pragmatic viewpoints about these topics or different topics that are happening in the world. So, I talk about everything. I think I talk about everything that impacts me, impacts other people, and I try to do it in a dignified way. I try not to be inflammatory. I try not to, hit people's senses in any type of negative way. I just speak on things as I see them, as I experience them, as I observe them, pattern observations, and I encourage everybody, as you're taking in different social idealisms to step back and think about what you know, what you've experienced about these things, and make the right assessment for yourself. Okay. I'm not telling anybody to believe me, or to absorb my experiences as their own. I just am sharing what I have experienced, and some people have chimed in and have appreciated my perspectives because it helps them to articulate maybe a similar experience that they may have had. But whatever the different case, you know, I think that we're all running on our own human experience. And I think that it's fair to give people grace for the human experience that they are running on when they're sharing their perspective, when they're sharing their ideas, because it's just so much to absorb in this world. And with that being said, this gentleman who follows my content, he reached out, and I did a coffee chat talking about racism. And in that, chat, and I usually just speak off the top of my mind what I'm feeling. So it's like if I wake up and it's something on my mind, I'll just speak on it because it's fresh on my mind. This is why I don't produce my videos like that, because it's like I'm just off the top of the head type of person. When I see it, I'll just speak on it. But this guy, he was like, he started off his comment by talking about, the usual suspect, in my opinion, Republican talking points about their own experience, especially if they are a white individual who comes from either poverty or not much. And a lot of times these individuals will talk about, excuse me, what they had to do to sort of get to where they are at in life, right? And I always give people points for their human experience and their journey, right? But the one thing that is really irking me about modern white Americans is that they are very unrealistic, in a very broad lens or broad scope. I've even had some of them who would admit that, yeah, there are, some people, I have cousins or my father or somebody was a bigot, right? And some of these people can be as young as 50 years old talking about their father was a bigot, right? And then they'll turn around and say, well, we had to work here and blah, 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 blah. So in the same tone, you'll talk about all these things that you had to do as a white man to work your way up. And then you will also acknowledge that your father and your uncles were bigots, right? And then you will turn around and tell a Black person that you don't understand how they could focus on race in modern America. Because your uncle People like your uncle and your father are the ones making hiring decisions, right? And that is still a problem for Black people. Is just because you pass a bunch of laws and you had civil rights, and and I thought about this too, and it wasn't until I recently, and I became a financial advisor in 2020. It was a career move. I transitioned into the industry, from automotive. And I loved automotive. If I didn't think that the sector was going to be volatile, I would not have ever left. But I went over into financial services. And many people, fellow advisors, other people, that's a white man's world. That's a white man's world. They reminded me that it was a white man's world, right? So, and I asked this gentleman, was he white? And I don't know if he was offended by that or not, but, I asked him, was he white? Because I was making the point that it's easy for a white man to tell a Black woman that they shouldn't focus on race and that they shouldn't talk about it when they are not living the experience of a Black person or a Black woman, right? And, this content is not to cater to what somebody wants me to say, feel, or think. This content is about what I am experiencing, what I see, right? And, going into the financial services, and I said this earlier, I feel like I got my Negro wake-up call. I really do feel like I got my Negro wake-up call going into the financial services sector in a dominant white male space, right? Because I realize why white men are more successful in spaces like that. Because if you want to be a successful financial advisor, right? And you want to be sort of the catch of some of these firms, you really do need to come from a strong network coming in, right? Otherwise, you're going to be really scraping by trying to figure out how to get new clients to trust you to manage their money. So the life of a Black financial advisor is really tough. So when I hear a white man say, well, yeah, it's tough for all of us. Financial advising is hard. It's like, no shit. I don't care if you're Black, white, Puerto Rican, or Haitian. I understand that the financial services, financial advisory space is tough for anybody. But there's extra layers of toughness when you look a certain way. And so I'll give you an example. I was going door to door because I put in the footwork. Like nobody's ever going to say that I'm a lazy person, ever. Because I put in the footwork. I was going door to door for my business one day. And I ran into a lady who was gardening. And we got to talking, right? Casual. And I just said, well, I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I just wanted to introduce myself. I live in a neighborhood, but I'm also trying to build my financial advisory practice. And, I'd love to service you if you need it. And she goes, oh, I never met a Black financial advisor before. And I said, well, now you have. Here's my card, right? A white financial advisor wouldn't have never had a dialogue like that. She wouldn't have even thought to say that to a white financial advisor. So when somebody comes at me and they ask me, why do you talk about race? And we need to stop talking about race. To me, it's just very disingenuous. And how are you, Pastor? How are you? It's just very, very disingenuous, right? It's like a complete disconnect from the fact that, we're not all running on the same human experience here or even perceptions. So when you got people, and this is what I say, rhetoric about Black people, it hurts us. Perceptions about Black people, it hurts us. Even the motivated, hardworking Black people, it hurts us. Because when you have people like, say, Candace Owens, who like to co-sign the ignorant portion of America, white America, with these ideas that Black people are low IQ. And I listen to all these little conservative buck dancers, right? They do the same thing where they want to keep plugging in that little low IQ synonymous with Black people thing, right? So when Black people go out and we're trying to do business, right? And a lot of us have high IQs, right? And I think a high IQ is very subjective. If you're talking about because somebody went to some institution and sat there for 4 to 8 years and listened to somebody else teach them how to think, I don't necessarily think that that's synonymous with a high IQ either. You just sat down and perhaps you're educated, but I think educated and intelligent are not quite the same thing. But off of that, but when you have people spouting rhetoric like this, right, about Black people, right, perpetually, right, it, even if you're a person who like, oh, I tune out everything, it's like other people aren't tuning out. We are a very connected society now. Most people aren't even getting their news from a TV screen. They are getting it from a cell phone, or they're getting it from their computer, from a social platform like YouTube or Twitter, or I'm sorry, X, or even Facebook, or wherever people go to get their feeds. It's like most people, they'll tune into local news, but most of the times people are getting their news from these social media spaces that consequently are riddled with satanic algorithms to sort of promote negativity and divisive ideas about people. So I just say that, if you follow this content, just understand that I am speaking from my own experience. I'm not coming from some thought tank or echo chamber. I have no commitment to those, right? I'm not going to be pro-Trump. I'm not going to be pro-Kamala, right? I'll leave that to all the lemmings in society that believe in that shit, right? But I just want people to, respect the fact that when I'm coming from my own experience on here, I don't think that it's fair for people to try to downplay it because you lived some other life and had to do something else. Like, we all have to work hard for success, but we cannot take away from the fact that that hard work is going to be different for everybody. It just will. I had another experience, right? Now, as a financial advisor, if somebody reaches out to you on your advisory site, and like I said, I never experienced racism to the degree that I have until I became a financial advisor. But this lady, different firms have different advisory sites. They set them up for us, right? This lady reached out to me via my advisor site. And, usually when people reach out to you through your financial advisory site, you're like, okay, this business is going to close because they chose you. So I call the lady up and I'm talking to the lady. And, we're just talking casually and, and I'm just getting to know her, kind of understanding her situation a little bit. And she mentioned that, she had assets in another place and that the strategy for those assets was the same as the strategy that was being held with us. And I was like, okay, I was like, ma'am, if you were my auntie or my grandmother, I wouldn't want you situated like that, because I look at, if a person has like a 400K net worth, that's all you have, and you're living off of that, you really shouldn't be hot in the stock market. Like, you really shouldn't. That's like a 40-year-old strategy. And I'm like, I don't know why the person who's helping you do this on that end is doing that, but you got to adjust this. Like, I don't care if this is the aggressive strategy, but one of these strategies needs to be dialed. Now, she was so appreciative and she's like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, you really took the time to get to know me, and I didn't really think about that. And I was like, no problem. She's like, yeah, I just went onto your website and, they said I could pick whatever advisor I want. And it was either you or some Black lady. And I didn't want to work with her. And I'm just like, now I'm just sitting back like, okay. So I said, well, ma'am, you can work with whomever you want to. I said, but she's like, oh, I like you. I said, but I just want to let you know I'm the black one. She's like, oh my God. Oh, I didn't know what I was doing. And I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you go back onto the site and pick whoever you want to work with. I said, I'd be happy to help you get yourself sorted out. But if you want to work with somebody else, I understand. Right. And she's like, oh, okay. Right. A white advisor would not go through that. Okay. A white advisor would not go through that. So when people try to make it seem like everything is just so hard for everybody equally, it's like, stop being so disingenuous. All right. A white face in America still goes a long way especially when we're talking about top opportunities. There's a reason why some spaces in America are white male dominated. There's a reason why. Because the faces that are doing the hiring are white. And don't let a black woman get hired by a white woman. You might as well just walk out the interview, girl. Just walk out the interview. Because I think, like me personally, I'd rather be interviewed by a white man than a white woman any day. I've never had a good experience working with white women. And this is not being racist. I hope one day some white woman will prove me wrong and change my experience. But to date, I prefer not to have them as managers and bosses at all. White dudes are way more easier to deal with, for real. And that's not racist. This is just my experience. And nobody can tell me that my experience is racist when it happened to me, right? Like, it doesn't make me a racist. Speaking on these human interactions that happen every single day, right? So, I asked the guy, was he white? Because I wanted to kind of understand his racial demographic for a reason. I needed to understand that because when you are coming at a black person, challenging their black American experience and their experience just in general, just because you had a different experience, to me, I gotta know if you're white, because you have zero idea what it is like to be black in America. Some white people know, white people get it. And those are the smart, awesome white people that we need more of in America. But some white people will literally walk around oblivious as hell, thinking that this America has changed so much that some of their uncles and cousins that they claim were racist, but they're not, right, are not the ones hiring or making hiring decisions for people. I remember I interviewed with this white chick one time, and I just knew I wasn't going to get the job. She literally interviewed me. It's like almost like when she saw me, it's almost like it was something that she had to do. It is something that she had to do. And it was one of those things where, I kind of was trying to see how she rocked, how she was going to kind of, transition into getting warmer or whatever. And so it's like, after a while, I was just like, this job doesn't align with me. Oh, no, it doesn't align with me. I walked away from it, right? I'm not even going to give you the upper hand of saying no to me, right? Because some of these people are running on stank, bias, and supremacy, right? They know they have leverage over a black person's livelihood, right? And they think that many of us are just so starving for opportunities that we would want to work with they punk asses and just let them rob our dignity away. Absolutely not. I've never had a problem walking away from an opportunity just because of the management that I was going to be dealing with. Because I refuse to let another grown-ass adult talk to me like I came from their ass. I got 3 kids of my own. You will not talk to me like I'm one of your children. If I screw up, I screw up. I am open to correction, right? I am open to that, because it's like we got bottom lines, right? And it's like, if there's something I need to do different or produce different, that's one thing. Hey, we got to do this, right? Like whatever you need to do. All right, cool, right? But when you start trying to get at me, get on, and oh, hell no. But there are some people who would take that. And like I said in my last video, most Black Americans won't. That's why we are always seen as kind of like a threat in these processes, because some of these people just know that they can't boss us around without feeling really bad going home. And some people, they don't want that smoke. So I think Black Americans, we miss out on success because people know that in these systems of things in America at this point in the game, Black people are intolerant. We will not tolerate certain things. It's just the bottom line. But to get back, I just want to say, to this particular follower, thank you so much for following me and riding with my content. And this is no disrespect to you at all and your own white American experience. But I think it would be intelligent not to conflate what you went through in this nation with a Black American. No person, really no other group else, that are not Black should do that, right? Because intelligently you are running on a different American privilege and experience, right? And even down to white privilege, right? I've seen white privilege go right out the door when somebody went to school X versus school Z, right? Or if this guy has a dad in the management somewhere, and this guy is one of those guys starting from the bottom, right? There's a lot of nepotism in the United States across sectors, across countries or companies. So white privilege definitely has its limits, and I've seen it. I've seen it in corporations that even white privilege has its limits, especially when nepotism is at play, right? Or other factors, right? So that's just to say that we are all, and to the white fragility types of arguments, right? I will admit that white people have definitely been, craftily, stigmatized in the last 4 years to heighten white supremacist type mindset. And quite frankly, I think that the establishment has even intentionally brought white nationalistic type of people out to play and have infused them into Trump's MAGA movement in some way. And that's why when he said that he was, he felt offended that I said that, most Trump supporters are racist. And, here's the thing. There are different degrees to racism, right? Sometimes just sheer bandwagon ignorance, about some stereotype about a group, right? Based off of recycled idealism and rhetoric can make you racist and stupid at the same damn time, right? And the Republicans are really good with narrating Black people with all these statistics, Black moms and single moms and welfare. And it's like white women have always been on welfare more than Black women, like statistically. And people can argue, well, there are more white women than Black women. But I'm just saying, Black people, I think if you really run the statistics, it probably is worse now because everybody's being short squeezed indiscriminately in this country. But I think, like, if I would say maybe as of maybe 2018 or something, you're talking about Black people weren't even, I think maybe 19% of the population was in poverty, which, which really tell you that Black Americans, I think if you compare Black Americans to, some of these Black looking people in the countries that they come from, I think most Black people can concede that even our poorest of Black people live better than some of these Black looking people coming over here. And that's just word 102. But anyways, I just wanted to address that comment because, I don't want people to think that I'm racist, right? But I do talk about race from a very pragmatic lens. And I think that we all should be striving to talk about race in a more pragmatic way and not an inflammatory way. But the problem with, I think, white people is just hearing white people, it invokes some kind of offensive emotion that something negative is about to be said about you. And it's like, no, sometimes education is priceless. Just like a lot of Black people, we can look at the problems in our community and address those problems, call them out, right? Especially even now, right? We have a lot more Black voices not being suppressed. So we can talk about the things that narrate our community in a negative way. And we can concede that these things are problems. White people need to be able to have that same energy because, some of you guys are not as innocent in America as you want to claim. And then there's even some of these white looking people who claim that they got privilege that are not, they claim they got white privilege, but they're not white, right? Some of y'all Ashkenazis, y'all know who we talking about, right? Let's keep it a buck. Some of y'all Ashkenazis need to get with y'all brothers, right? Because y'all over there passing as white. And then y'all got people hating white folks because of your rhetoric. Some of y'all rhetoric, not all of y'all. But anyways, that's just to say that white people really need to stop being, they talk about Black people being sensitive, but as soon as they hear those two words, white people, they just automatically get in their feelings. And it's like, maybe maybe the words are in context of giving you some advice about how to check your people who are making you look bad. Because if you truly don't believe that America isn't racist, if you truly do believe that racism is only this tiny piece of America now, then you don't have a big job. Check your people. Because I go on X and I see a boatload of Trump supporters spouting racist rhetoric, these recycled Candace Owens talking points about Black Americans that demonize, vilify us. And honestly, in real life, it do hurt the way that people do business with us. So, stop being so sensitive is what I say, respectfully, right? And I say that to Black people too. But stop being so sensitive when it comes to constructive correction, because some of you guys really need to listen to what people are saying and not be so quick to just try to minimize people's experience. Like I said, white financial advisors will never have the type of conversations that I have, right? Nobody will ever be shocked that one of them have come to their door like they're some freaking unicorn, right? But that's my experience, right? And you can't tell me that experience is not valid. Because as much as you want me to stop talking about race, my race is a constant reminder many times in my professional career and in my life, right? And that is my human American experience, and I'm not going to tell you. And I even said something to the point that, even Black people should be conscious not to minimize, the poor white person who came from nothing. I even said that in one of my recent videos. I said that it's disingenuous. I even said in that race video, actually, that we shouldn't be minimizing, what poor white people have gone through, because just like there's cycles of poverty of people of all groups, people really don't talk about the poor white people enough at all. There's where do you think MAGA came, like a large portion of MAGA came from, really? Right? And I talk about this all the time. There was a segment of rural white America that even the Republicans thought were beneath them. These people were not participating in the political process, and they were mostly comprised of poverty line whites. I mean, I've been saying this for years. These are the people that Hillary Clinton called deplorables, right? These were the poverty line whites. And no, they weren't the sharpest tools in the shed whites. They were what they perceived to be the disenfranchised whites who basically they don't realize that their ancestors basically sold their great white legacy to the Zionists, and now and but the era of the Gentiles ended in 1914 anyway, so it was bound to be the era of the Zionists right now anyways. But that's a whole other biblical conversation if you follow my content, right? We are in the era of the Zionists, and that is the era that we will be in until the conclusion of the system of things. But anyways, I'll go deeper into that on another time. But just, like I told the Gentile white folks, they're there. They're there. They're there, right? Y'all getting treated like black folks for a reason, right? Blame your ancestors. They were money hungry too, and they sold out your legacy. So, anyways, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening, right? I'm not going to get into the Zionists and the Gentiles, but I will say white supremacy boils down to white looking Jews and Gentiles. That is what it boils down to. And everybody else is just a casualty to their supremacy games and their supremacy wars. But unfortunately, I don't really understand, I don't know. I've been pondering about a lot of these axes of powers, because obviously, you have your Gentile nation type of powers, and then you have your nations who have fealty to the Western Zionist order. So it's going to be interesting how all of this pans out, but I'm just praying for God's kingdom to come. And until then, I would just deal with this craziness of mankind. So you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.